All right, everybody, we're about to get started. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Scale Up Hub. My name is Mark. I helped organise this. I probably emailed a lot of you last night. There is 0 hours that I do not email, and Arturo, who I work with, loves it. So I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So today we've got a jam-packed event. We'll have some slides up here. This is also being recorded, so anyone that is presenting or anyone that asks questions, if you want anything kind of edited after, I will do that in post, or I'll get AI to do it. So there's also that, that's why we're all here. So we'll start off today. Ian will do, are you going to do a talk welcome? And then we'll get into Stone and Chalk. All right, thank you everybody.
Thanks very much.
So hello folks, welcome to the New South Wales is the home of Data, Digital and AI Taskforce. My name is Ian Oppermann, for those I haven't met, a Chief Data Scientist at New South Wales Government, and if I say anything controversial, also Industry Professor at University of Technology in Sydney. Disclaimer. So welcome. Thank you very much for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces. We are here to try and connect the dreamers, the doers and the dollars. We're trying to connect people into a network where there is no wrong door. If you've got a great idea, if you've got a challenge, if you've got a resource, you can find each other. We only do these meetings in person specifically to try and build that network of no wrong door. And what we're trying to do is upskill ourselves. I want my government colleagues to see incredibly creative technologies which comes from New South Wales. I want university folks to learn what problems government cares about, to learn to speak differently about the tech that you've got, ultimately to get the tech out of the lab and into the hands of people who can use it at scale. And our industry colleagues, what we want, of course, is not only to see the interesting challenges that governments are talking about, but also some of the really innovative technologies that are coming out of New South Wales. We have been largely sticking to Sydney CBD. This is an experiment this year to see how we go. So it looks a little bit like Sydney CBD is the home of Data, Digital and AI, but the intention, of course, is that we will increasingly start to explore different parts of New South Wales. We have, here today, we're at Tech Central with Stone and Chalk, which was a very convenient thing for me to do, to walk across the road from the McKell building. We have been out to Parramatta, we have been out to Kensington. We will try to get more adventurous in future. So that's really good. Today, again, it's not about solutions, it's not about procurement, it's not about trying to win a deal today. It's really about understanding each other and understanding the problems and challenges, but also understanding some of that great tech that's out there. So let's take that mentality through all the conversations we've got. We have some amazing presentations from the folks at Stone and Chalk today. I'm delighted to say that we have also some non-Stone and Chalk SMEs who are going to pitch their wares. And also we have some government colleagues who are going to start to talk about directions of travel. We all know that New South Wales has been a little conservative about exploring future directions in light of the fact that there was a budget that was released on the 19th of September. We're starting now to get a better sense of direction of travel for different parts of government. So increasingly we're going to be hopefully talking about different parts of what New South Wales is doing, some of the big challenge areas that government's working on. Without further ado, I'm going to hand back and say thank you very much to our host today.
Hi everyone, if we're talking about dreamers, doers and dollars, you're in the right building. Welcome to Stone and Chalk. We are Australia's largest innovation community for emerging tech. My name is Jacqui Duncan. I'm the Director of New South Wales for Stone and Chalk, so I lead the operations here at the Scale Up Hub and our Startup Hub up at Wynyard. Now there's a few slides in here. We'll have a look, see what's in there. It's a surprise. So a little bit of statistics about us. We currently have about 515 companies nationwide. So we operate 2 hubs here in Sydney, but also in Melbourne and Adelaide. So we have a national presence, which is awesome for a lot of the investors who are predominantly based around this area. They get access to national deal flow. Our companies have raised 1 billion plus in capital. That is a huge figure. It's actually over that now. I think that's 18 months old, which is extremely impressive, and we're very proud of that. We have a number of companies who are exporting, as well as about 30% of the companies here at the Scale Up Hub are actually international scale-ups who have launched into Australia via Stone and Chalk. They're coming from countries like UK, US, Israel, and Ireland. So we're very happy to host them here. 6,000 plus residents. A lot of people call our facilities home, and we do our best to make sure that we take care of all of their physical needs so that they can focus on what they're here to do, which is grow their companies. We take away all that pain so they can focus on doing that as well as they can. 100,000 jobs created. It's obviously a big thing, big deal for our local governments here in Australia to create jobs in the innovation economy, and we're happy to support that. We're very founder first. We are playing in all of these verticals at different kind of stages. There's different support in place for different founders at different stages. The whole intention is to get them through this life cycle. It's quite difficult. I think it's something like 90% of startups fail in the first 2 years. Our job is to bridge that gap, make sure that they've got access to the expertise, capital, customers, anything basically that can fuel their growth and hack that path faster. Home for emerging tech, as I mentioned, you can see a number of different kind of technologies on this screen. We have everything from cyber to space tech, everything. Martech, cyber, like I said, cyber already, quantum, absolutely everything. And we are super keen to see this continue to grow, and who knows what kind of technology is going to come next. We're serving the entire community, so startups and scale-ups is our bread and butter, but we also support government and corporates on their innovation agendas. So whatever they're working on, we work with them to basically bridge that gap between the startup scale-up world and whatever they're working on to embrace innovation. This is a list of what we offer to our startups and scale-ups. There's a bunch of stuff in there. And then, yeah, we're uniquely placed in Australia to support these companies. And that's a little bit of just kind of very quick overview of us guys. We'd love to talk to any companies who are looking for a new home. And we're here to support more initiatives like this, the Taskforce. We're very delighted to have you guys here today. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you, Arturo.
Hello, everyone. I see a few new faces here. My name is Arturo Rodriguez, and I'm a co-founder of NotCentralised. So we've been part of this since the very beginning. It's really interesting to see how the task force has grown and evolved, because it really is part of what we do at NotCentralised, being a venture studio, right? So we run the Australian DeFi Association, we run the Data Science and AI Association, and we also do some work, which effectively means that we go after shiny things, emerging tech. And we're going to talk about a few of those shiny things that we've been working on, because we've been able to, through this task force and the connections that we've made, we've been able to connect to a lot of different people within the community. And in this case, the community being elements of government, industry, and then also a few of the different startups. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is AI, because it's shiny. Been talking about AI for the past almost year and a half with the advent of GPT, and I think that one of the most difficult problems that we've faced when talking to bigger organizations is not really that of how cool is this technology or how could it help you, but it's more about how do you get that customer adoption or that user adoption within the bigger organizations, right? And that's a problem for almost all types of technologies. Even for something as cool as GPT, because people just don't really like changing. It's just the way it is. So what we've done is that we've taken GPT and built it into organizations like public healthcare networks, which we're currently deploying this within. And we're helping them understand, how does processing knowledge help you in specific tasks like compliance? Like, for example, write me an email, do this, do that, following all of the different guidelines that the organizations need to follow. It takes a lot of time, actually, to write an email that is compliant with all of the different branding guidelines and policies and so forth. And that's time that could be better spent, on Insta. So, if you're going to waste your time, then you just do it in the way that you prefer to do it, right? So control accessibility, accountability, smart search, all these things that you think are easy to implement with something like GPT, but it's actually really tricky if you want to have a nice flow because you're connecting to different document databases, or you're having access to specific functionality within that organization. So here's one of those examples. Just write me an email. Most of the guidelines and information about how to do things is actually specified in a lot of the documentation that organizations already have. Now imagine writing the email that you see below versus just writing the prompt that you have above. Now here's one of the tricky parts with AI. It's that it becomes more and more difficult to differentiate between what is human output and what is AI output. That's a big problem for organizations, right? So what we've done is that we've said, well, it doesn't really matter who created it. What matters is there a human that attests to the veracity of that output? Now, how do you do that? Well, what we've done is that we've integrated a really nice little feature called the microsignature into every single one of those outputs. And that microsignature, what it does is that it effectively creates a signed package of that piece of information. And it's really simple. All it does is that it tells people, yes, I have looked at it and I'm actually putting my name to the veracity of that information. And that changes the entire way in which an organization can effectively engage with a GPT model, because either the information has been verified or it hasn't. And if it hasn't, then you just treat it as such. Small things like that actually make a really big difference when people actually use it. The second thing, and I know that I'm jumping around a little bit here, but we do many shiny things, is that we also work within blockchain. In blockchain, what we've been tackling with organizations now is digital bank guarantees. Now, they're all paper-based, which is quite incredible. Like, they're not even bearer instruments in the sense that you have your piece of paper. You can't give it to somebody else and then they actually go and ask for the value of the guarantee. It really just is that paper representation of a tripartite agreement. Now, the reason why it's really interesting is because this can be solved using blockchain. And that's effectively what we've been doing. So in this case, we've been working with various organizations, including government, to understand what is the best way in which we actually have a digitized version of these bank guarantees and effectively these digital signatures, so that we can manage the life cycle of the risks. We have a standardized version of the agreement so that people can basically understand exactly what they're jumping into. We're doing so really, really quickly. In this NFGX product that we created, it's actually really simple. In the front end, you're able to view your different guarantees, you can create them, you can amend them, and you can agree to them. Now, the reason why blockchain is important here is because this digital signature needs to be agreed, but it also needs to be auditable. And people need to know from these different organizations that, yes, this person has actually signed on to this agreement, and therefore we have a legally binding document that can actually be executed later on. Now, both of these technologies, one of them is AI-based, the other one is blockchain-based. They use a concept that we created called microsignatures that actually uses a really cool technology, which is zero-knowledge proofs. Now, why is this important? And it's because the concept of a signature is nothing new. I mean, you sign PDFs all day long, and you can have a checksum of a file just to make sure that the file is not changed. But you can't have selective disclosure on these documents. So what I mean by that is that I can't take a hash of a document, put it on a public blockchain, and then prove things about that without having zero-knowledge proofs. So, for example, if we have a tripartite agreement that is signed between three people, and you want to, on a public blockchain, make sure that people can see that this has actually been signed, in the future, the owner, the beneficiary of this contract, may want to prove that they signed a contract that is worth at least $10 million, for example. through zero-knowledge proofs and through these microsignatures, we've been able to create a workflow where this file can be shared, that proof of ownership of the document, let's put it that way. And I can then offer a cryptographic proof that this document is in relation to a deal that is $10 million without actually sharing the details of the deal. And that's really, really important when we're talking about both AI and actually blockchain, because AI will capture all of that information, process it, and most likely make it public. Blockchain is public by definition. So I've just been told that I have less than 30 seconds. Yeah, I just want to leave you with the fact that we're a venture studio. We deal with a lot of cool tech, but more importantly, we work a lot with organizations so that they understand how to implement this technology into their day-to-day workflows and have that customer adoption within the bigger picture. So that's up for me, and I think it's time for Cognitivo. Cognitivo.
Hey everyone. I'm Alan Hsiao, the founder of Cognitivo. We've got a couple of members of our team today. We started working on AI in 2017. We thought of going into business to do blockchain, but I think our time is right now. We were very jealous for a couple of years at the start of this startup journey. So in terms of AI, look, everyone knows how amazing this market's going to be. The economic benefits are going to be tremendous. McKinsey, the wisest people in the world, tell us it's going to be like 13 trillion per annum in efficiency, by the end of the decade. However, doing AI is actually pretty hard, and it comes with a lot of challenges that most companies will fail in their deployments. 85% of all AI projects to date have not made it into production. It's probably even more dire than that. Most companies can't even build data warehouses properly today. So we're all rushing into AI. The reason is because AI is fundamentally a new way of programming, right? It's moving from deterministic if-else specifications. We can run very predictable sprints. Project managers of the plan love to do that. To coding through example, and that's fundamentally different. If your developer, your data scientist cannot see production data, how are they going to build production workloads using AI? It's just not possible today. The other thing is around new risks. We all know there's bias. However, take for example, how do you deal with the right to be forgotten within somebody who's a constituent in a data set? How do you do that if it's a third-party SaaS instance, right? Who's got no traceability into who the users or the end customers are. Also, adversarial attacks are kind of a new area, right? Scientists have shown that if you flash up a certain image to a computer vision model, you can trick or confuse a particular AI algorithm, right? And that has dire consequences in areas such as driverless cars. So in our rush to cash in on this gold rush right now, we see a lot of CIOs, a lot of tech people say, I'm gonna deploy AI every day in the news. Some companies use some copilot or something, some computer vision service. Microsoft's rolling out all this fancy stuff, so is AWS. But most people today are going to use AI using a third-party SaaS API or algorithm. So they don't build it themselves, they don't train it themselves, because these large language models, etc., require too much data that you have. And labeling data is really just the worst thing ever in the world. So everyone's kind of going to say, hey, I'm going to move a little bit of data in this API to that particular service, but if you think about this, they're all little brains that you're tapping into. Your organization is feeding everyone else's brain. You're not getting smarter as you're building AI, and therefore all of your algorithms will not get better, not get more fit for purpose for your organization. So this API-based AI strategy, you might think that you're getting very far, very fast, but it's absolutely very limited. So I'll tell you a little bit of a story. We've been doing AI before AI was cool. We worked with a local government, and you see a lot of companies doing this kind of startup today. The council needed to catalog all of their street signs, right? And they used to do it all manually. It's by law you have to do it, because if you knock down a street sign, you don't put it back, there's an accident, you get sued. So we went through and we got a vendor to drive around taking 360-degree videos, more high fidelity than Google Earth does it. And first of all, we got 2.5 terabytes of images. And we're like, oh, we got to label like 10% of these. And we're sitting there clicking through it. And most of them didn't have any street signs, right? So like half the project was just in like clicking through images. Then we got to enough of a base. We built the model. That was pretty easy, YOLO, this kind of stuff. That was pretty easy. It was pretty accurate. And then we gave the output in a big spreadsheet to the customer. And they're like, how do I verify this? Right? There was no UI. So we had to build them a simple React page. This was a couple of years ago. And we showed the map, we showed the street sign, we let them correct it and then tell us whether it was correct or not. And then we said, now we've got information in the feedback loop where we can retrain the model, right? And that was quite a key thing for us in getting that better and better. We've then taken that kind of iteration of that product and we worked on another example at an international bank, and we did something similar, but it was now for identification documents. And they're like, no, you'll never ever see any of our data, you third-party people. We're like, how do we do this, build these models, right, without ever touching any production data? So we built these, we did our own synthetic data. We combed the dark web buying these templates and we got legal advice, it's legal. We actually had to buy these templates to make synthetic data and we got good at it and we built our own, so 13 different types across Australia and New Zealand. And what we did was we built these kind of like seed or foundational models that could scan through the corpus once we deployed these algorithms into production. So it could basically short or filter out those images that we needed to label, right? And our lead data scientist is like, cool, let me have a crack at it. Install this open source annotation tool in the bank's production environment. And they're like, nah, you can't do that. And like, how do we label this thing? So then we had to build the labeling tool into the application that we had deployed into production so we can do labeling there on the client's own data. Right? And we're like, hey, why are we labeling one image at a time? Let me have a crack at it. Do 3 at a time. So we had AI models assisting the labeling process. And that was a very key thing because, labeling took like half the project time. Now we've kind of shortened that to 10, 15% of the time. And the other thing is then we've introduced is, okay, well, we're big on this human in the loop, this review process. You can correct it, you can type the right value in, but then we said, why don't we just let them click and drag and then you do the bounding box and it'll auto-populate that stuff. And even better, when the people do that, we get labeling data. So the whole point was to deploy a CX, a business process, a digital interface that you could go in. It's very efficient, even without any AI, and people can use it efficiently. And as you use it, we capture the click data that then trains the model. Right? That was kind of the game changer for us. So, if we kind of reflect on those, several projects, what our field experience has given us in terms of 3 key insights is it's much more efficient, it's much safer, and much better to bring the algorithm to the data. That's kind of, so in retraining the data on the client's data, you're going to get a much better outcome. The second thing that we learned was because it's going to be an arms race, right? Next week, somebody's going to build this algorithm that detects a certain thing or gives you a certain outcome. It's an arms race, so you need to have an architecture where your models can evolve over time, can be retrained efficiently. So if you're using certain algorithms from a certain provider, it's all black box. You can't fine tune that. That's not going to be very good for you. You also need to be able to invoke an ensemble of algorithms. So fusing that with what the human does, and that will evolve over time and get smarter and smarter over time. And the third point was you need to build a CX that kind of works in hand with your algorithm. Right? And we kind of call that AI infusion, having human in the loop, having the digital process built in a way that is conducive to improving your AI algorithm. And so we've taken all of that product knowledge, all of that product knowledge, field experience, put it into a product. We call it AI Factory. And it's got 3 things, low-code UI, a marketplace of models. We're working with all of the various AI developers. Come and deploy your models and you get basically a fee for every time that's invoked. And we're building efficient tools to retrain and fine-tune models in the client's environment. And we're working with research agencies to build, scanning, basically an assurance framework that can check every model that is deployed in our environment. And the last thing is that AI is really hard because you need to integrate 3 different disciplines. Build the model, get the data pipeline. People fail in building warehouses today, that's hard enough. And then you need to wrap the whole thing into a transactional application. So I would say most organizations will never ever be able to integrate these 3 disciplines in any meaningful commercial way. So don't do it. AI promises a lot of efficiency, but the process of building AI is highly inefficient today. We've built a product called AI Factory, the UI of AI, video on there. Come chat to us if you want to use or develop into our platform. Thank you.
Because of GDPR, the Data Governance Act, the spoken on sovereign data spaces, means that that market is a lot more receptive to our products, but we are not close enough. We're Australian founded and in fact New South Wales founded, and I'm in the Stone & Chalk Startup Hub, and we have people in Melbourne as well. So a lot about big data. I have to say we're quite concerned about the Cognitivo model where you go into the dark web and find all that information, because it's exactly, it's a really good illustration of the problem of data, that there's massive opportunity with data and there's a lot of threat as well. So how do you tread that path between and make sure that organizations get the information that they need, individuals can get access to the services they need without giving up this information? And I heard a VC in the US describe last week, he said, we're living in a fraud moment, and that's really powerful. So we're helping organizations meet some really important policy goals. In sustainability, Google put out this report where they said that 72% of people said, yeah, our organization is probably overstating its green footprint. Also with digital identity, Australia, it has this unfortunate label as the data scam capital of the world. So 47% of Australians have had an email from someone saying, we've leaked your data to the dark web and it's now going into also product development processes. But that's really shocking. So what we've done is we've said, okay, we understand that individuals don't want to give up their data, and we also understand that organizations don't want to collect that data anymore. Last year, there was this fantastic picture of Minister Dominello when he was the minister, and he had a driver's license and a potato. And he said data was the hot potato, and now it's acid, it's oil that no one wants. So we have to think about ways of not giving access to that data. And so that's what Meeco does. We have a secure data vault, secure storage. We have a credential engine, which is compliant with the W3C standards. And we also have a wallet. And really the wallet is a user interface, so we don't put a consumer-facing wallet in market. We have an API that gives access to our cloud tools. So we have good traction across 5 verticals. Some of these are in production and some of these are proofs of concept. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'm just going to pick a couple of examples. So KBC, I mentioned that we're in Belgium because GDPR and the Data Governance Act really forced organizations to think about data. KBC bought into this idea that you trust the bank with your money, so trust them with your data. So they have our vault, which is accessible through their mobile banking app. And they've got a really cool integration. So you go into a shop, you buy a fridge, you get, that doesn't sound very cool, the next bit is cool. You get a warranty, you get a pop-up in the app that says, hi Victoria, you bought a fridge, what about that warranty? Do you want to store it in your vault? And then in 6 months' time, you get a message saying, how are you going with the fridge? And then in a year's time, do you want another product? And they're building out really sticky services around you saving information in your vault. One of the first things that they're building out, and when I think about New South Wales and their promise to issue verifiable credentials and some of the use cases around that, this is the one that sticks in mind. In Europe, it's been possible because of the European blockchain services infrastructure. So in 2018, just as blockchain, in fact, it was in Gartner's hype cycle, it hit the trough of disillusionment, just as the European Union said, let's roll out blockchain services. So they've created interoperability, they've put the infrastructure layer in there, and now you have the situation where universities and banks can collaborate on services on top. The interesting thing from a KBC perspective about this is you don't have to be a KBC customer to use their wallet. So you can be a Hsiao, it's a bit like UTS, you can go to Hsiao, you want your digital credential in a wallet, and you can put it into a KBC wallet. It's a cracking customer acquisition tool. Connect ID, we saw last week, the bank-led digital identity solution launched. Prior to that, we did some really interesting experimentation with Connect ID. We used the Queensland Government driver's licence as the sort of identity proofing document. We created verifiable credentials from that, and we used the Hedera hash graph to store the hash of the verifiable credential. And then my last few slides are all about the work that we're doing with Hedera, because while you think that banks and governments might be the ones really focused on digital identity and data privacy, it's not actually the case. So where we've seen traction, specifically in the last year, is in the sustainability community. So Hedera is a distributed ledger. They have a policy engine called Guardian, and you put rules into Guardian, and it spits out a token which is representative of a ton of carbon. So the problem that Guardian had is, one, they weren't interoperable with the VC, verifiable credential community. So we created some interoperability for them by creating interoperability around their DID documentation. We've also built selective disclosure. So Arturo was talking about the importance of selective disclosure. We were in working groups where people who'd got grants from Hedera said, well, hang on a minute, we're not going to put all of that information on this publicly discoverable blockchain. You think, yeah, of course they're not, because it's got addresses of people, it's got their energy consumption, but they need to make that information available to auditors. So the challenge they had is, how do you turn up at an instance of the Guardian? How do you prove that you have right to have access to that information? And then how do you create a situation where that information can be shared privately and securely? So we've built a reference implementation for that. And the other thing, the reason I've included this is we're building tools that we want other organisations to integrate. So Intellect EU is a big professional services company in Europe, and you can log into an instance of Guardian with a Meeco wallet. So we were really delighted because they did all the work, and that was proof to us that our tools work and can be integrated by a third party. As you'd expect, we're ISO 27001 accredited, and we also have this My Data Operator status. So My Data Operator is really big in Japan, South Korea, the Nordics and Europe, and it's a set of guidelines and principles for technology companies that they can say to organisations, we have a citizen-centric approach to the way we manage data. And if I can, I don't know if you're allowed to leave with a request, but can industry and government think about the success that EBSI brought? And can we think about how do you create an interoperable layer? So standards as infrastructure that allow people to innovate on top of that, because Europe's doing a really cracking job of that. I probably shouldn't say that with a European accent, but if we can emulate that, that would be good. Thank you.
So right arrow for clicking. Hi, I'm Rod Martin, founder of Humanable CX. For those that are wondering, CX stands for customer experience, but it could be member experience or donor or student experience. But we bring a real human touch to customer experience with responsible AI automation. So responsible, regulated, rules-based AI. And we've developed patented real human video concierge technology. So if you go to a website now, you can see a real person on a website, not a robot or a deep fake or a digital human, but someone that can actually interact with you. But it's all automated and at scale. So it's a convergence of human connection and AI. And you can engage and activate customers, citizens, and communities with our tech, and automate it and at scale. I just wanted to basically talk a bit further about this notion of responsible AI. So AI has been around for quite a while, but it wasn't always generative. I mean, ChatGPT's only been around for a year. But by now, most people think that AI is, all about ChatGPT or generative AI. Now, that's amazing technology, but for financial services, which is the space kind of we operate in most, it's now creating a big question around trust. You probably saw last night that Joe Biden's now signed an executive order essentially governing AI. So it won't be long before that kind of thing happens in Australia or anywhere in the civilised world. Also in a recent survey, 77% of people said that the top risk posed by generative AI today is misinformation and disinformation, which is the last thing you want with financial services. One of the strongest themes at South by last week in Sydney was this notion of authenticity or realness. It's becoming a real thing now. So that's all cool. There's a role for financial service in financial services platforms for responsible or predictable AI, which follows predetermined patterns or rules. So, when someone buys an insurance product or a financial services product, they're asked a certain amount of questions online. It's kind of a multiple choice. Do you want car or home insurance? You see some buttons, I'll take car. And the sort of process goes on from there. One of the examples that responsible AI can fit into that process is that if someone's buying a mortgage and we ask them a lot of different questions about them, how much do they earn, how much do they make, what their wealth is, we build up a profile of that person, and then in real time at the end of the process when they've purchased the mortgage, we can offer them, a cross-sell to an insurance product, and based on what we know, it could be a cheaper insurance product or something more expensive. So that's an example of responsible AI. Our three kind of business pillars, if you like, is new customer acquisition. Once again, that's that video concierge technology where you can interact with a real person. We're just developing and about to launch early next year an extension to that technology where through voice recognition you can actually talk to the screen and the person will respond back to you. So you won't need to type your answers or click buttons or anything like that. You can actually have a conversation with the person, so it becomes like a super immersive experience. That side of the business on the left-hand side there is for applications where we don't know who the customer is. They come to a website looking for information or to make an inquiry or get a quote. So we've got no data on that person. We just interact with them on that level. The second part there is customer engagement. So we work for companies that already have data on a person. So it becomes a lot of onboarding and ongoing customer engagement and things like that, always using that video concierge technology. And then the third part is customer retention. So a big thing for insurance companies, policy renewal, account reactivation, that type of thing. And we're also ISO 27001 certified, a process that I thought would take 2 weeks, but ended up taking a year. Yeah, right, exactly. We've had some pretty good traction. We're bootstrapped to date, but we've working with the who's who of corporates in Australia. We've got a global vendor agreement with American Express, Woolworths Insurance, one of our large clients, NIB, Westpac, BT, mainly financial services, but we do work with universities and also not-for-profits, some sporting organisations, things like that. Globally, we're starting to work with companies. Every day of the week, our system sends out SMSs to between 400 and 500 Swedish people wishing their dog a happy birthday. So it's totally the reason I got into the business in the first place. But that's for Agri, pet insurance, so that's cool. And we're going to sort of build on from there. Some of the things we achieve is churn reduction. Churn, if you don't know, is like if you lose customers. 28% policy renewal increase for Woolies Insurance, a pretty cool thing. Surprised them as much as us. Reduced contact centre traffic by up to 37%. So that was for NIB health insurance. So with the onboarding, like when we onboard a customer through the video concierge and we address them by name and animate all the things they've just signed up for in their policy into the discussion, we also include messaging, which is basically the most asked questions that the call centre gets when someone signs up for a new policy. So it just cuts down call centre traffic overnight. Reduce CAC, which is cost to acquire customers. That was from American Express, blew them away too. Exploit claims management by up to 28%, that was for Woolies. Last slide here is our product roadmap. So on the left-hand side is our enterprise business for large corporates. That's where we're hand building cars. It's a really bespoke thing. And like building customized thing, like choosing the talent, choosing the wardrobe, really customizing the messaging, really building out the decision tree, making a huge kind of process. Next one there, enterprise video concierge technology is more template based. So we're building more of the factory where we can churn out things a bit quicker. You can have the same person as someone else, or things like that. And then the third one there is we're building a self-serve app, a Canvas style thing where you can interact and build your own programs, and we're sort of building that to sort of lead for e-commerce and engage with customers who just bought something and really sort of upselling and cross-selling. The fourth one there is our IP moat. So for the video concierge technology, we've just been awarded a patent for that internationally, so we're pretty happy about that. And we also, for user-generated video, so when someone's interacting with a video online in real time, we can generate videos that are based on what they're talking about. I'm out of time? 1 minute, okay. I thought you had a question.
I've got plenty of questions.
And so that's kind of it. If you want to actually play with the video concierge and experience it yourself, go to the website, humanablecx.com, and it's all there.
Last but not least, from the Stone and Chalk cohort, we've got Arlula. Sebastian, come up. Here you go. It's yours. Thank you very much. Great. Hi guys, hi. Good to see everyone here today. My name's Sebastian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Arlula. And we're doing some really interesting stuff with satellite imagery. So the reason why we started this company was because we realized that over the last 10 years, there were thousands of new imaging satellites being launched into Earth orbit, right? They're in space, they're orbiting, they're collecting huge amounts of data about our planet. But the big problem here is that the economics of the industry of procuring this data to create meaningful insights and change was really skewed by all the government and defense purchases that were going on, right? So it made it really, really hard to access this data for corporate or enterprise or personal use as well. And on the other side of this equation, we saw the fact that there are so many new Earth observation or data startups really launching to solve problems using satellite data, right? Some good examples are companies that are using it to try and understand carbon credits and carbon accounting or auditing of that at scale globally, right? You can't send an agronomist out to a field to try and inspect soil. You have to do that at scale. And what's the best way to scale that? Well, with satellite imagery. You've got people looking at tailings dams from space, mining tailings dams from space to try and understand whether or not those dams are at risk of collapse, right? Really important things. And then you've got, on the other side of the spectrum, you've got organizations looking at, real-time bushfire detection, right? Understanding floods. We had a flood, it was a year or two ago in New South Wales, and people were still trying to figure out, just by eyeballing it, where the water line was. From space, you could do that in an instant. You could cover 500 square kilometers of land, right? It's a completely different world we're living in with all of these new satellites. But the problem here is that the satellites, as I mentioned, are quite hard to access. You've got these thousands of satellites in orbit. They're producing petabytes of data a day. But you put your hand up. Has anyone ever actually used satellite imagery in their job before? 1, 2, 3. That's better than I expected. That's pretty good. So the problem here, though, is that it can be hard to access, right? There are all these different vendors, all these different suppliers. None of them make it easy. You've got complex licensing and business models that are a real pain to deal with. And usually when you're building a model, when you're trying to develop some sort of algorithm, some sort of processing technology to ingest this data, you've got different requirements you need from different suppliers. So maybe some suppliers deliver in a certain file format, others are processing in a certain way. And as a data engineer, you need to try and figure out how to massage all this data, how to standardize it, normalize it, and make it interoperable, right? Which is a huge challenge. And then finally, as I mentioned, or I touched upon already, you've got these sort of technical standardization issues as well, which can be really, really tricky to deal with. So at Arlula, my team and I, we got together, we tried to solve this problem for organizations, right? We realized that, one, there were all these satellite operators, and you don't want to have to spend 9 months negotiating with Airbus or Planet Labs or whoever else, to try and get access to this data. That's the first thing. We realized as well that you need to standardize this access. Satellite operators, just for anyone that has dealt with the data or who hasn't dealt with the data, are still delivering imagery. These images can be, half a gigabyte in size, and you might need thousands of them. They're still delivering this data in FTP or unsecure FTP, which is a huge problem. And the fact is as well that, it's just super, super difficult to sort of negotiate these deals. So what we've done is we've built a platform, infrastructure essentially. We call it infrastructure as a service to help organizations procure and manage satellite imagery at immense scales. We've seen that most suppliers and most companies that buy data really deal with one supplier. They get the data, and then once they've got it, they just sort of leave it in maybe an Amazon cloud bucket for ages, and it sits there, and maybe 3 people in the team try and figure out what to do with it, and it doesn't really get use. It doesn't really get traction. What we've actually seen, though, is the more sophisticated users are buying from multiple different satellite operators. You might have high resolution, UV optical imagery where you can see, your house, and you can start to see, who's in the backyard. Then you might have radar satellite imagery to really identify, say, minute movements in buildings and in road infrastructure. You might also be ingesting drone data as an organization or aerial imagery as well. And then how do you centralize all that data? How do you manage it? And then how do you make sure that everyone in your organization has access to it? I think the Cognitivo guys were saying before as well about sort of data warehousing and data engineering. It's a huge problem, and especially in the geospatial space as well. So you've got government organizations now as well who are procuring data in an ad hoc way, but no one really has that centralized access. And this is really what we're solving. Better APIs, much more standardized processes. We're implementing a protocol called Stack Protocol. It's a geospatial protocol that helps you organize all your spatial data and make it easy to sort of ingest or deliver to other applications as well. So to give you an idea, we're working with a number of government organisations now as customers or as partners. So Queensland Government, Department of Natural Resources, we're working with them in a few different ways, or not just Department of Natural Resources, but also Agriculture and Fisheries and a few other entities there, where we're helping them understand what's happening in that state. Right? We're helping them understand and map dams, usage of those dams as well, how those people are actually interacting. We're also working with them to understand how people are actually, or mining companies are actually using the land, and when they are using the land, how they're using the land. Getting this sort of really essential data that you can't get in any other way, right? Satellite represents a way to scalably procure data across the globe. And this is something you can't really do with IoT, you can't really do with drone or aerial because it's just too hard to achieve that kind of scale. And Queensland, just for anyone that's sort of paying attention at home, 1.8 million square kilometres. It's a huge area you have to monitor. And if you're a government organisation, if you're an entity that has any responsibility for certain land, 1.8 million square kilometres is just insane, right? It's mind-boggling. And before this kind of technology existed, it was really difficult for a lot of orgs to actually manage that land. So I'll walk you through a little bit of work we've done with the CSIRO. So Something that the CSIRO has developed is called the Easy Hub, right? It's essentially a massive supercomputer that processes geospatial data and satellite imagery at like a continental scale. So if you want to figure out, how many of a certain type of plant there are across an entire country like Australia, you could throw that data into Easy Hub and you could actually go and process it and get an answer out, right? You can create these really amazing maps out of this kind of data. But the problem is that CSIRO only had access to NASA Landsat imagery and ESA Sentinel imagery. Essentially, these two data sets that were open source and open access, which are fantastic data sets, by the way. We also provide those. But the data is more coarse, more granular, and if you need that higher resolution, or if you need a different kind of data set as well, then that may be difficult. So we work with the CSIRO team to essentially integrate some of our technology so they could start streaming different kinds of satellite data from different vendors and different providers. And what this has allowed them to do internally, and we're going to be launching that publicly into the Easy Hub platform in the future as well, is actually start to procure data from this multitude of vendors in a much more standardized way, right? And so the way people are starting to build out models and the way people are starting to sort of train algorithms now, it relies on huge amounts of data. Thank you. Huge amounts of data, and it becomes a really big pain to source that. And if you're trying to understand what's happening, in your local council, in your state, in your government, your country, you need that kind of transparency. You need that kind of, access. So I guess, how can a little support New South Wales government? There are multiple different kinds of ways we can do things like this. Things that we've already worked on in the past, scalably monitoring new constructions, being able to understand and report on auditing, across 1 million homes or hundreds of thousands of sort of constructions and developments. Obviously the big thing here that we're all, thinking about as well as sort of the next bushfire season comes up is how do you protect, how do you monitor, how do you manage as well these kinds of threats and risks. And then also looking at how you can sort of support and better maintain the environment and the land as well. So there's a bunch of different things that I guess satellite data can do in general, but I think that this would be a really interesting opportunity for people to explore. My name is Sebastian. Thank you. If you'd like to learn more, please visit Arlula. Thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. We've got the slides a little bit out of order, so we're just going to jump ahead a little bit to an announcement from Ian. Apologies for the preview there.
Oh, mate, what are you doing?
Oh, so sorry. It was that fast. All right, Ian, over to you. You want the microphone?
Yeah, sure. No, I won't actually. We'll call on my colleagues from New South Wales Government. So we're going to switch gears now. We are going to have a short conversation. Going to have a short conversation from colleagues from New South Wales Government, and then we're going to switch back to some more SME discussions, and we've got 3 more SMEs to get through, which are not associated with Stone and Chalk. The other thing I want to do is, whilst I remember it, is tell you all about the next New South Wales AI Summit, which will take place on the 18th of December at UTS at the Great Hall. No information available yet, other than please mark your diary, 8:30 till 1:40 in the afternoon. Light lunch included, hopefully. Let's see. That's one of the issues we have to discuss. And the intention, of course, is that we're going to give everyone an update of where New South Wales is going with its AI assurance framework, our nationally consistent approach to developing AI assurance, and also some of the really cool things that have happened in New South Wales Government. So with that, as nothing at all related to context, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what's happening inside New South Wales Government right now. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Fairley and I'm joined here today with my colleague April Pham. We're from the Department of Planning, of course New South Wales Government. I just want to clear something up too. I don't have the ability to be in 2 places at once. So I know in the last forum someone actually reported that I was here presenting on this. I wasn't. I wish I had that power, but I don't. So today we actually wanted to come and talk to you. It's a bit of an introduction. We absolutely would love to come back in and team if and when that's okay. We are about to commence a project that we really want to have a look at artificial intelligence and any other digital solutions that could really help us look at the development application process of our workflows here in New South Wales Planning. The reason we're really focusing on this is because, of course, we're all very much aware of the housing crisis, not just here in New South Wales, but within Australia. Under the National Housing Accord, the New South Wales Government has been set the target of achieving at least 377,000 new dwellings by 2029. It is an ambitious target, but we really want to make that happen. What that means in the planning space, for those of you that are not that familiar with it, is development applications. So housing development applications are one of the key components to really being able to push through and create a really good pipeline of dwellings that are coming through. And our councils really do the heavy lifting in that space. They really process about 85% of those dwelling DAs. So what we want to focus on are opportunities to look at the DA workflow in our digital system here and see if there's opportunities to really help councils and also the applicants to improve the quality of the application at the time of submission, and really to see if we can then help councils at that early pre-lodgement stage, maybe going into lodgement, to really help them as well. So what we want to try and do is work with our council colleagues and with yourselves and of course the development industry as well, and just see if we can actually start to focus on that workflow and see if there's some opportunities to look at what we're calling market ready or close to market ready products. I want to be really clear on that. We don't have the time, unfortunately, to see if we can start to create new ideas. We don't have time to test it. So this particular process will be about developing up assessment criteria with councils in particular, really understanding what the challenge statements are for them, and then working through a process in the new year with yourselves and others who are interested through an expression of interest to come and talk to us about what products are available. What we really want to try and do is work through those workflow efficiencies, but more importantly, we want to create what we're calling at the moment a go-to panel. So once we've done the evaluation, we want to establish a panel that will be accessible potentially by applicants. And, you know, we're government, we have to work through the headaches of procurement and what things can and can't be done within those authorising challenges that we have, but also that councils can actually look at these products as well. Why do we want to do that? At the moment, what we face in government and councils is where we have very, very talented vendors with good products that are coming to us one-on-one and they're talking to us about their specific products. The challenge for us is trying to understand whether those products are easily usable immediately at low or no cost, at low or no significant change that can work within our planning environment. We've got 340,000 registered users in the New South Wales Planning Portal, 128 councils and multiple government departments that access this system daily. Each one of those entities has their own IT systems, their own procurement challenges. So one of the challenges that we need to work through with yourselves through this program is how we actually can stand up a panel of products that we're really confident people can actually start using, and that there's really good demonstration that it can deliver some significant time savings for both the applicant and for the council. Anecdotally, our councils tell us that some of the biggest areas they think for opportunity is at that time of filling in the application or submitting the application, looking at the quality of what's being submitted, looking at the types of supporting documentation that's necessary. Some councils have different needs. We've got to make sure we can help them make that happen quickly. And it actually then reduces the planning effort so that when that comes through, the planners don't have to go back and forth to ask for more information, to get some clarification on information. So they're the sorts of things we're going to include in the challenge statement. And as I said, it's to create this go-to panel. What I'd really encourage anyone who's interested in this space is we're really keen to get more localised case studies and evidence. And I've seen that today and it's fantastic. One of the other challenges we have is when people come and talk to us about the great work they've done in the US, the UK or Europe, it's fantastic to hear about. We do have a different authorising environment in Australia. And what I mean by that is we have different legislative requirements, we have different procurement rules, we have a different risk appetite for government, understandably so. And because we are a government entity, we are utilising public money and we are doing this for public good. So we have to make sure that the work that we're doing and the products that we're using are transparent in what they're doing and how. That, you know, any secondary use of the data is known and appropriate for what we're doing in this space. These are all the things that we have to work through. Our council IT systems are all at different stages of, you know, newness. Some of them are on the same system, but they have different versions. They're the sorts of things we have to work through. So what's the process? We don't have a cool QR code at the end of this. I just want to stress that to you. Sorry, we're not that sophisticated. We are government. But we do want to take through what is a very human-intensive process, and that's really important for us. As I said earlier, our councils do the heavy lifting in this space, and our commitment through this project is to see how we can help streamline the DA workflow process, primarily for them, also for us, and also for the applicants as much as possible. So I think it's a really interesting challenge and opportunity for us all. We're going to start with a workshop on the 16th of November. So hold for those of you that were going to come and attack April and I at the end of this and say, how's this all happening and how do we get involved? Just hold. We're going to do a workshop with our council colleagues. It's really important for us because we want to do this with councils, not to or for the councils, okay? We want to work through the challenge statements with them. What are the things that are causing them the headaches? We are going to focus on the pre-lodgement stage because they're telling us that that's where they think there's a significant opportunity, okay? There will be other areas in that workflow, and we're really open to people saying, we can deliver some great things for that area, but we also can demonstrate that our product's going to go beyond that and it can provide all of these other opportunities as well around efficiencies and quality. We then want to work into, once we've done that, we want to work into this stage 2, and this is really about looking at a directed ideation process. So we do want to do an expression of interest early in the new year. We have avoided Christmas. We do listen to people that say, please don't do that to us over that Christmas period. But we will do it early in the new year. We then want to have either, one or two of these workshops. We might need more. The reason why we're not locking into specific detail right now is because this first stage is really going to allow us to understand the actual significance of the problems and the challenge statements themselves. And we want to have some flexibility in how we might tackle that through this second stage process. And then, as I said, our goal is to try and stand up a panel of vendors and products that we're confident can really deliver to what those challenge statements identified here within the New South Wales planning environment, and that it can be done so where we can do it in full appreciation of the procurement complexities, all of the ethical questions that we have to answer in government, and also to make sure that the councils are on board and that they're confident they can use these products. We do want to get it done as soon as we can next year because, as I said, we've got that looming target of 377,000 dwellings by 2029. It is burnt into my head and we have to do everything possible to see what we can do. And we think this is the most and the first significant workflow that we can tackle. I'm sure there'll be more as we work through this. So this is what the agenda is going to look like for our collab. I won't take you through it in detail, but you can see there it's creating awareness. We really want to get the councils to be the ones that tell us what the problems are so that when we then invite industry to come and do the process through an EOI, etc., you're actually able to talk to those specifics and tell us how you're going to be able to meet or exceed what we're going to evaluate them against. Another fancy diagram, but same thing. And I think that's probably it for me. Yep. So I'm happy at the end of this we can answer a few questions, but as I said, we're not going to give much more detail than what we've taken you through today, purely because we want to be able to sort of flesh this through after that first workshop on the 16th with our council partners. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So thank you very much for doing that. And I'm, as I said, because the world has changed for us inside New South Wales government, increasingly I'm hoping that we have more and more of our government colleagues talking about some of the bigger programs that they're working on. Now, is this? No, that's not us. Okay, so what we're going to do now is switch gears again and go back to a couple of SME pitches, and then we might actually finish early, in which case we could go to lunch a little bit early. So we have next Visual Cortex.
Visual Cortex, Lachlan, come up on stage. Just to let you guys know, lunch will be served at around 12, maybe earlier if we're lucky. And there is food and drinks provided by Stables, who have also spoken at these events earlier on. They help you, if you've got crypto, you don't have to off-ramp it, you could actually use it out there using MasterCard, and they're over in the Philippines now as well doing remittance. But over to Lachlan.
G'day guys, you had me at lunch, so I'll try and keep it succinct. So we are Visual Cortex, so we are a computer vision startup. We're located here in York Street, sort of just up the road. And basically, we've got a pretty simple mission. We're really trying to make video data actionable throughout the enterprise. And I'll explain what I mean by video data in a minute. And really the mission there is to build the best video intelligence platform that we can for non-technical people. I'll talk a little bit about that and why we think that's really important. So look, essentially there is a huge data mining opportunity when it comes to video and the data that you can get out of that. It represents now sort of well over 80% of all the data that's generated through web traffic, and it's growing sort of 15-fold, and it's enormous. But there's been some big challenges historically when it comes to trying to understand the information, actually derive intelligence from video. So lots of the early attempts in the computer vision area have been really built around proof of concepts, like kind of consulting firms, those sorts of things. And what that's really meant is there's been big struggles with technological and financial scalability if you try and deploy these products in production. Often actually capturing and doing something meaningful with the video metadata hasn't been a focus, and we think that's where the focus needs to be. There's also lots of single point solutions out there. So what I mean by that is tools that are really good at doing one thing. So for example, license plate recognition or counting people. But the thing is, if you want to do multiple things and look at multiple objects throughout video data, then you're dealing with multiple vendors, multiple tools, really hard to scale, not cohesive, and quite difficult. And lots of the audiences for this have typically been machine learning people and people who are really techie. And so if you're not one of those people, but you want to make business decisions from that intelligence, these tools have been pretty difficult for you to use. And that's where we sort of saw a pretty significant gap in the market. So the idea for us was to basically come with a platform approach. And what we mean by that is developing a space where you can run and deploy multiple machine learning applications in one place. And that's really where we come in. And it's about being able to be scalable and deployable wherever you need. And really the big thing is about being able to go and extract the metadata about the objects and actions that you programmatically detect in your video. We don't go and keep that actual video itself, strip that away, we just have the metadata. And that's really important from a security point of view as well and a privacy perspective. So that's kind of our approach there. So let me quickly talk to you about some of the key things that we think we're solving in a different way, and we're bringing this all together. So again, one of the things historically is it's been really difficult for people to deploy this cheaply in production, or at least get started, because it's required bespoke hardware, those sorts of things. Essentially, we can work with any existing types of cameras and video feeds. So that means you can get started at a low base, you can use the commodity hardware you have on hand. Also, with our platform, you can scale to any number of cameras, servers, and sites. So again, taking one of those big issues as well. Run multiple machine learning models on each video source. So what I mean by that is you can have a camera and you might be running a machine learning model to go and count vehicles, but you might run another model on that same camera that's detecting particular types of actions that people exhibit. For example, we do real-time detection. So that's if you wanted to go and send a real-time alert about something that's just happened. I've got some case studies I'll talk to in a sec. We also do offline processing. So that's when you're trying to aggregate video data over time and basically use it as you would any other type of data source to sort of understand trends. And again, I've got some case studies for that as well. And we make it really easy to go and either use that video metadata generated with charts and dashboards and things in our platform, or you can go and export and extract that metadata and go and load it up in third-party analytics tools, those sorts of things connected to the other data warehouses, other things you're doing, so you can have integrated insights. And I'll touch on that again. And also, one of the huge things in this space has been deployability, and how do you do that? Again, reliance on bespoke hardware, that sort of stuff. We can basically be deployed anywhere. So that's on-premise, cloud, hybrid approach, whatever people need. And we think that's a big challenge moving forward. We've also got something called the Visual Cortex Model Store. And briefly, what this is kind of sits on top of our platform, and we put the machine learning models and things that we develop in there as well. But there's also an opportunity for our partners to go and put their machine learning models in that same platform, and we can have joint revenue streams and agreements like that, and also to have customers go and bring their own if they want proprietary models that we either co-develop with them or they develop themselves. So that's the introduction. Some tangible examples, hopefully. Lots of what we concentrate on at the moment are around people-centric and vehicle-centric models, as well as license plate recognition. That's where we're spending a lot of our R&D effort right now. So let me talk about some examples. So One of those things is, of course, in smart cities where, for example, governments are trying to understand pedestrian analysis and looking at who's using shared pathways and those sorts of things. And so we've been involved in some projects that are to do with trying to track and then classify the different types of people-based objects on these paths. So, you know, bikes, scooters, people themselves, those sorts of things, wheelchairs, shopping trolleys even, but try to understand what those usage patterns are. And we've got some of this running in production, and we're getting over 95% plus accuracy across all those classes. And that's been some really interesting projects to be involved in. Another example, and you might notice this is obviously a synthetic environment. And so we do use this to do some model training, but it's been in retail. And so things like counting store entries and exits, using people attributes to identify and differentiate between staff and customers. And that means you can do things like measure customer service. So queue management, how long are people waiting to get served? Dwell times, how long are people waiting to get seen by an employee throughout the store? And then things like understanding the different types of engagement with different types of products in a store by looking at the dwell times around different types of displays, for example. And there's interesting things like action recognition. Slip and fall is a massive one from an OH&S point of view. So there's a fair bit of interesting stuff going on in the retail space that we've been involved in. And if it wants to go to the next slide, it might. Excellent. Then I guess on the vehicle side of things, a couple of interesting examples there. So we've spent a lot of time refining our license plate recognition model, and we're doing some interesting work in, that doesn't perform better that well, has it? In car parks, for example. So while we run across multiple sites and hundreds of cameras at once, we know this because it's running in production, we can get real-time results in under a second. And this is more interesting than it sounds, because to actually do this well, you've got to run multiple models in an aggregated way. So you've got to detect the vehicle, detect the number plate, detect each individual number and letter within that plate, depending on how you've constructed the model to go ahead and do that. We do face detection and blur at the same time when people come into car parks from a privacy point of view. And we have some vehicle attributes like detecting the colour and make as well, which can help you do some fuzzy matching to get some really high accuracy results with those detections. So basically what's going on here is that's meaning that car parks that use this don't have any leakage, so we're having to let people go through without obviously paying. And we trigger the real-time payments and boom gate operation from that point of view, and we actually find getting efficiency through that at scale pays for itself really comfortably. And basically then you can get the historical data and look at trends. People who are visiting your shopping centre, what cars do they drive? You can line that up with point of sale data, do some really interesting integrated analysis in that way. And we've got this running at 98% plus in production, which we're quite happy with. And just the last example here, another one on, I guess, the vehicle side of things. We've done a soft beta launch of our true SaaS platform. So this is actually a portal where you can go and upload your video footage, connect your video streams, and go and connect this up to the Visual Cortex platform and go and truly self-serve. And we've got a beta going on at the moment with some traffic engineering firms that we're working with to do basically vehicle detection, counting, and classification so that they can understand the different types of usage on roads and then therefore plan their projects more effectively and more efficiently. So we're pretty happy with where that's heading as well. Cool, almost done, I promise. Why am I showing this? A lot of what we do to get to market is done through partners, a bunch of different types of partners. So obviously big strategic alliances and things, but the purpose of showing this slide in this room is to really say a lot of what we do to get to market is working with other people who work with data, who work with video, who do things in the machine learning space. So if you're sitting here and you're a consultant and you're doing something to do with analytics, machine learning, or just data, come and have a chat to me because I'd like to talk about the work that you do and how there might be an opportunity to work together. Also, I know there are people who come to these meetups quite often from universities. We've got some university partnerships because there's lots of AI and ML students and programs who are working on machine learning models and actually need someone to try and bridge that gap between what they do and commercial opportunities. Again, come and talk to me because we're interested in having a chat about co-developing machine learning models. And for some specificity around where we're seeing a lot of demand, and if this lines up to you and what I just talked about there, these are some of the key industries that we're working in and we're seeing lots of demand for those vehicle and people-centric machine learning models in the computer vision space. So if these are areas that you work in, please come and have a chat to me. Love to grab your details. Hopefully that wasn't too pitchy.
Hello everyone. My name is Will. I'm with PropCode, and very much speaking to the New South Wales planning team members in the room. PropCode is working in planning, AI for planning regulations. And so myself, I have been a planning consultant in New South Wales. So I'm quite familiar with the rules, regulations, the way the system works in terms of property development and projects going through the pipeline. And so very got my hands on the pulse of the housing supply debate and the way the framework operates to supply housing and all the various parties, the private parties and public parties in that process. And I've already done some work around building software that people are widely using across the industry. Jonah, who's not here, is the CTO. He's got a strong background in software engineering and particularly around AI and natural language processing, which is really key to what we're actually working on. So the vision that we have at PropCode, and we only just started about a year ago, so this is a vision we're kind of scratching the surface of at this point, is to have AI really understand planning regulations, of which there's an enormous volume. So in New South Wales, there's something like 20 million words of planning regulations across state and local planning documents and instruments. And that's one state, so obviously multiplied by every state out there, let alone globally. You can understand how up until now, without technology to help, that was a job that had to be done by human professionals to understand and interpret those regulations. So I myself was a consultant operating to help to advise both private parties and governments. And then the authorities, of course, have planning officers who are checking applications on property projects. And they have to know those rules, again, just with kind of the limits of the human brain. So what we would love to do is create a platform, and obviously AI is going to be a critical part of the enabler of that platform to deliver automated and instant and accurate answers around property regulations and what that means for property projects, whether on the private or public sides of that process. Now I'll probably bore you a little bit with some of the knowledge around the planning system here in New South Wales. If you're not familiar, typically development applications is what Amanda talked about. That's how a lot of things get approved. There is a fast track approval process, which is called complying development. This is the real purpose of complying development is it's a kind of black and white limited rule set, and it applies statewide. And so there's certain smaller projects where this fast track approval is actually an alternative to DAs. So although Amanda talked about wanting to speed up the DA side, we've actually already done some work on the complying development side, and this is only really our first proof of concept around how technology could help with this process. And so I just want to take you through what we've done already around this step of complying development. So quite a few options can be built in terms of property projects with CDC, and so I'm not necessarily educating you on the planning system directly, but this is really just to illustrate the complexity of what we've already built in terms of understanding property regulations. So there's many different projects that could be built with this particular rule set, these particular regulations called CDC. So we started with this as our proof of concept, hoping to go much beyond this to a much wider regulatory rule set around complying around development applications and any possible property project. So just as a little glimpse of what it looks like for someone to try to figure out if they can do even this simplified fast track approval process. And this is very much the pre-lodgement step that Amanda was referring to. If you want to figure out, can I do this fast track approval process? I'm just trying to build a duplex on a completely ordinary low density residential site. First, you'd have to check what zone the property is in. However, zones are not consistent across the state. They have very different permissibility lists. So a dual occupancy is what we're talking about when we say duplex. That is permitted in some low density residential zones and not permitted in other low density residential zones. So we've already hit some local variation just trying to figure out if duplex is even allowed. Then to understand if we can do this fast track process, there's a particular state level instrument. It's actually one of the longest instruments in the entire planning scheme in New South Wales. So simplified, but quite complex, unfortunately. So we look for the part about duplexes, figure out what the particular requirements are to have a property be eligible for this fast track process for a duplex. And there's a number of things there around usually the lot geometry, and then what kind of thing you're expecting to be able to build on the site. There are, because of the nature of complying development, it's meant to be for projects that really should be easy to approve. There are a lot of exclusions for places where it would be a bit too sensitive to allow things without the higher scrutiny of a development application. So if you are in the final column on that slide, any of those particularly sensitive sorts of situations, and the one I've marked there in red is heritage conservation area, that's a place where you would not be allowed to do complying development. So the illustration here is if someone, say you're just an ordinary homeowner, or maybe it's a small scale developer wanting to obviously contribute to housing supply in the state with what should be a really simple project. There's actually a lot of work, even just at this pre-lodgement step before any authority has seen your application. A lot of work for you to figure out what am I actually allowed to do, trying to navigate, as I said, this enormous complex regulatory rule set. Very often requires the participation of some sort of expert in the rules, so a planning consultant, town planner. Often architects kind of get stuck with that task, even though they're not the experts per se in planning rules, they're really design experts. So they should be spending their time designing the building rather than reading a bunch of rules like this. So we feel that at PropCode, this is an opportunity for technology to come in and help people answer these, what should be, I'll say there should be simple answers, or should be a simple process to give these answers, but really if it's a human reading all these documents, trying to piece together an answer, you can see how that's a really big obstacle. So what we've already built with PropCode, our proof of concept is around this space, this particular situation. And as I said, this is only one corner of the planning rules across all of New South Wales and all the use cases that exist in property development. But we feel very excited about what we've already done here. So we would instantly check all of these rules. There's over 1,000 rules that would have to be checked around the CDC just to understand what you're allowed to build, if it's an option on the site, and what the design requirements might then be for that sort of building, like a duplex. We also, in order to make these determinations around the rules and a pass or fail for a property, we have to check over 40 map layers. So spatial data you were talking about is very much a part of what we have to do to be able to instantly and automatically give an answer. And that's stuff that I've done throughout my career. So I understand all the kind of nuances of working with big data sets, big spatial data sets, and trying to connect those in to some other kind of word-based, text-based information in documents. It's not at all straightforward. Now we use the same data as the New South Wales government, so what the planning portal would show, obviously that's important for us to kind of not be out of sync. So this is our current live product. People have been using this. We've had thousands of properties checked on our product already. So someone would see this output of here's the items that you would be allowed to build on this address if you're interested in this fast track approval process. So some properties will have no options available because everything might get ruled out if it's, say, that heritage conservation area that I showed before. But a lot of properties do, in fact, have quite a few options. So up to 70% of properties can do a dwelling house, so just an ordinary single dwelling, detached house. And up to 45% of properties in residential zones can do a duplex. So you can immediately see it's not 100%, but it's not 0% either. So that means anyone who's interested kind of has an objective of building something like a duplex, has some uncertainty and will have to do some checking. So we make that really easy with our product today. The transparency is also a really important point here. If we're proposing that we're giving people an answer around quite a complex regulatory data set and analysis, they obviously need to see how we've done that work and what answers we've gotten to based on our analysis of the regulations. So in the report that we show for a property, it will detail every single rule that we checked and whether they passed, failed, or as you see, unknown. And that transparency is really key for our users to feel like they've gotten value, to feel like they've gotten the right answer, to understand where there might be further checks required. One of the things I'll highlight on the bottom here, it's a rule about flood risk. So flood risk is a really tricky one. There are thousands of maps sitting usually in PDFs held by councils. And unfortunately, I've worked with flood data for well over a decade, and it's unfortunately not gotten any easier in New South Wales to piece together flood data. So although CDC, this particular fast track, can't be done in flood areas, it's quite difficult to automatically detect that. So we say unknown, and that's a very important point for the user to feel like they're understanding what else needs to be checked that this technology didn't tell them. And then just another little example, these are some design rules that would apply to this site. So we don't check a design in this proof of concept product, but these would be rules that have to be followed by that user when they're designing the property, the building. So that's all for that proof of concept. And it's not to say that's the only thing we want to work on. We obviously would love to be participating in the New South Wales planning opportunity coming up. As I said, we have a really big vision around what AI and technology can do to make regulations a lot easier to understand and work with. And there's all kinds of potential with GPT-based products or other LLMs where we would have the ability to interrogate the regulations, a huge body of regulations, and deliver answers instantly and accurately. So that's something we're actively working on. So thank you, and we'd love to speak to you.
Thank you, Will. And last and not least, we have Siena.
Great, thanks, Ian.
Okay, so we're going to go to a live demo for this, so pray to the demo gods.
Good luck.
Okay. I'm not sure if we do. Can we take this one off? Okay. All right, I'll leave you in the trusty hands of Alex.
The meeting has been ended by the host.
Oh, he's got to start. Yeah, we start a new one. Okay. Just, talk amongst yourselves. How good is it, though, to see all of these great startups that are here and projects working on things? I was just reading last night, Como Homes, which is another construction company, has collapsed. So there's like all of these, it's like every second week there's a construction company collapsing. There's a massive need for the things that you guys are building, whether you're tackling construction or not. It's just any manual, centralized, potentially, built on a house of cards infrastructure kind of, industry. It needs this kind of thing. So, hurry up and let's get these things out there.
All right.
But hurry up in a nice way. Anyway.
Well, yeah. All right, thanks everyone. My name is Alex Cheek. I'm the head of product and design for Siena Planning. Got my co-conspirator Tim Golsey-Smith here, COO and strategy, and I'm going to share my screen because some of you may recognize me from a few months ago. Back in July, I was here talking about some of the work that we've been doing in this same space of trying to bring technology to simplify the statutory planning process. I'll just share my entire screen. All right. So, we're really looking at this issue of the housing crisis, and we think in this kind of context we need a statutory planning system that works really well. Luckily, the last couple of presentations from Amanda and Will, I think, gave you a decent sense of what we were talking about when we say statutory planning. But just to make it really clear, statutory planning is the people in council who have to look at every one of the applications for a new building or a new project, or even just answer questions like, can I cut down this tree? Can I put in my fence? Whatever it may be, things that are controlled by the planning system, they all need to be answered by these people. And it's become quite a bottleneck. And on top of that, there's a skills shortage in the industry. People that are statutory planners in council, they're leaving to go to private sector. University enrollments are down. It's a really big issue in terms of being able to have councils have the people they need to deliver this really important service. And part of what makes it really complex is the different types of data. You've all been seeing what's going on. We've got, can you guys see that stuff on the screen? Yeah, there we go. That there's very complex application data, everything from blueprints to written descriptions. There's lots of different mapping data. Will was talking about how hard it can be to find some of those different sources and bring them together. And then the legislation itself is incredibly complex. There are multiple acts and they change very frequently. And so, the statutory planner sits right there at the middle of that system and basically does what I call swivel head integration, where they're looking from screen to screen and trying to make sense of how these things all correlate. We've talked a bit about the work that we were doing in Wallandilly Shire Council to help their planners with this system. But we've actually, a couple months back, won a grant from the Victorian government to work with a council in Victoria on the applicant, because just as Amanda was saying, they are a huge driver of these kind of delays, because if they don't understand what they're meant to have submitted, if they don't understand the forms that they're filling in, even if they just have questions that are, taking up planners' time, can I cut down this tree? That's slowing down the entire process. We were looking at the data. It's about 175 days of calendar days in Victoria to get a DA approved. And about 50% of those have to be sent back to the applicant for what's called a request for further information, meaning that they missed something they were meant to have included. They didn't know everything they had to submit in order to get their application assessment ready. So I want to take you into an example of what we're doing, because part of our vision is to really simplify the process for applicants to make it accessible for everyone. Tim, I'm going to pull up the Telegram screen, hopefully. So let's see here. So what we're doing is we're using generative AI to make a conversational way for regular people to ask the kinds of questions that they tend to have before they've started their project. Like I said, our goal is to help reduce their confusion, and also eventually we're going to be adding the ability to tell them like every report that they need to include in their thing. So what we can put in here is an address. We've got, this is all live, so if you have any questions or if it doesn't work, please have, mercy on me. But I'll try and, no, I can't zoom in. So what we've got here is it said, hey, Alex, let's start with your address. Tim's put in 24 Summit Road in Lilydale, and now it's gone out to the Victorian version of the spatial viewer to get information about the zone that applies to this property and any overlays, things like bushfire management or historical overlays. So we can get all of that data from the system. So now it says, that sounds like a good plan. So now it's told me that, and it said, can you roughly describe the development to begin our conversation? And I've said, Tim's, by the way, chatting for me. He said, hey, I have a property with a house and I'd like to put a granny flat in the backyard. Sounds like a good plan. To better understand your proposal, could you please tell me the size of the granny flat you're planning to build? It's going to be 45 square meters and for my elderly mother. Great, thank you for sharing that. Can you also confirm where exactly on the property you're planning to locate the granny flat? So what's happening is the system is going into the planning scheme, pulling the aspects of the ordinance out, reading through them, and then figuring out what's the next best question I should be asking this person to efficiently help them elaborate their project, because a lot of times people don't know what parts of their idea is controlled and which is not. In some cases, the color that it's going to be is very important. In other cases, it doesn't matter at all. In some cases, the size is very important. In other cases, it doesn't matter at all. So what we're doing here is saying, for this site, in a place where we've got a neighborhood residential zone and a significant landscape overlay, these are the things that matter. So Tim has said on my behalf, it'll be in the backyard 4 meters from each fence. Great, thanks for that information. Now can you confirm if the granny flat you are planning to build is movable or fixed? Wow, okay, so it's actually, I know this part of the planning scheme in Victoria, so it's diving into this distinction between a dwelling and what's called a dependent person's unit, right? So if you have a fixed dwelling, there's one set of rules that apply, but if you have a movable or something like a prefab thing, different rules apply. So Tim said, it's going to be a prefabricated building provided by a granny flat business. Great, thanks for confirming that. So as you can see, it's right now taking us through lots of questions. I didn't remember to preface this a bit, but where we're at in our process with this council we're developing this with, the Sierra Ranges in Victoria, is we're really focusing now on its efficacy, right? Does it pull the right ordinances? Does it ask the right clarifying questions? But I think if we kept going, it would keep asking us questions, right? We haven't flicked over into the point where we're refining the way that it carries out the conversation, or when it realizes that it knows enough to give a confident assessment. So Tim is maybe going to put a few more things in. Jump to the brain. So what I want to show you now is what's happening on the back end, where what's been happening all along is the system has been, like we said, processing all this different stuff and pulling out, what it understands the goal of the conversation is, pulling out the project, defining the project that we've shown, and then it's giving us an assessment, right? And so it can say, if we asked for this assessment, it would give it to us, but it'll be faster if we look at it here. Thank you for providing all those details. So it's just updated based on something Tim said. So it says, it looks like a planning permit may not be required. The proposed development is for a granny flat, which is considered a dependent person's unit. Like I said, see, I know the planning scheme in Victoria. It's prefabricated and movable with aligns with the definition of that dependent person's unit. It's gone through and described a few other aspects of this project. And it's also mentioned this significant landscape overlay. And it says that under that clause of that overlay, the permit is required to construct a building or carry out. However, this requirement does not apply if the schedule to the overlay specifically states that a permit is not required. So since there's no specific schedule provided, then we don't have to worry about it. So it's saying, and finally, this is a preliminary assessment. So don't take this all the way to the bank, but this gives you a kind of bit of clarity of what's happening.
It's one worth mentioning, you click on any one of those links, takes you straight through to the...
That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. So the kind of transparency that we were talking about, that's such an important piece of this type of system. Right here, you can go straight to that significant landscape overlay, and you can start to see, when those permit requirements, like where they're actually defined in the legislation. I don't think I need to contrast it with what a normal person would do. I'm sure that as you read through these kind of things yourselves, it can be quite bamboozling to try and understand exceptions and exceptions to exceptions and all those sorts of things. So I won't bore you too much with that. But one thing that is interesting is that we've taken, maybe you've heard of these kind of chat with a PDF type features that ChatGPT has integrated, or people are building on top of it. And so one of the things that we tried was using that same structure. So we took the 1,311 pages of the Yarra Ranges planning scheme and dropped them into this and asked it a very structured question. Can I build a granny flat in my property that has a neighborhood residential zone with a significant landscape overlay? And it's given me this type of answer saying, based on the information here's some points. And so it's gone in and it's like convincing, but it's extremely generic, right? It's taking me to things that are relevant, but it's not helping me along the way, right? And so it's really dependent on the quality of the question that I give it. And the other thing is that it doesn't understand the logic inherent in the structure of the documents, right? Because one document supersedes another, and so I think there's it's just taking it in as a flat sort of document. Anything else, Tim, that I haven't said?
I think just look back to the positioning of the team.
Yeah. So, it's here. So I think, let me just pull up the presentation. That's the reason it went away. Close it. So I think, that's the wrong one. Dang. And all of my flicking around. There we go. So I guess the thing that I wanted to reinforce is that, and then part of the plan of our project is to create a very clear version of this chat interface, right? So you can see that in a chat interface, it does still require quite a lot of reading of the person and understanding what they mean. So that's a next step of our project that's commencing very soon, to take that sort of unstructured content that comes through the chat and sort of put a ribbon around it and say, here's your clear results. Like I said, we're calling it Siena, and our goal is to make it accessible to everyone. And I think a couple of pieces that are really important to call out is that, like I said, this isn't just taking ChatGPT and putting it into this problem space. We're really creating a domain-specific AI. And a big part of what we're doing with that is taking this complex task and breaking it down and distributing it across a team of AIs. I think that's something that a couple of the other folks mentioned, that there's a team approach that's required. Another piece that is probably obvious, but the planning legislation, if it's changing so frequently, we need to make sure that it's not relying on what ChatGPT or any of the other AI agents that we're using in our teams is is trained on. So we actually have to create a specially structured format of the planning legislation, which we can actually draw down in about 4 minutes. So I think that makes our process really scalable across different jurisdictions and different councils or states. The last piece that I want to mention is that this co-design approach is a really big part of how we operate. We've been working with lots of the kind of end users, applicants, architects, whoever it may be, but especially lately with councils. We think that they're, as Amanda said, they're really feeling the brunt of the pressure in this part of the system. And so they have a lot of incentive themselves to solve this problem for themselves. And so we're working very closely with them in Victoria. And we've also started to put together a reference group of our own so that, we're, ready to go with our New South Wales version of what you just saw today by early next year. And as I mentioned before, we have been working on a kind of broader portfolio of projects. We've got this product that we're working on for applicants, but we definitely see that this same kind of generative AI approach could really accelerate any work that we're doing for statutory planners or even generating insights for strategic planners. And yeah, we're very excited about the announcement that were made today and also looking forward to chatting with all the rest of you. So please be in touch. Thank you very much.
That was great, really fantastic. Thank you very much to our SMEs who were pitching just then. So originally on the agenda, I had a slot allocated for another one of my government colleagues, but I suspect that's not going to happen today, but that's all okay. Our next event will take place at the offices of Dell. Is Warren in the room? There we go. Would you like to just very quickly come down and tell us what we can expect, where we might be going in December? So this is one of those without notice calling upon. It does happen. I'm terribly sorry. It keeps things fresh and lively. And if you could just quickly introduce yourself and where you come from.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So it's good afternoon now. Warren Bailey, I'm the Account Director for New South Wales Government at Dell Technologies. Ian's invited us to host a 2 Market Street on the 6th of December. It's going to be at the offices of one of our partners, Macquarie Government. So thank you, Ian.
Great, awesome. And there will be a sandwich.
There will be, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. It's fair to say that the invitation process has been slightly chaotic. You will have noticed that I do the admin for this mostly myself, and occasionally I double book us, occasionally tell people the wrong address, occasionally, it just happens. But it does keep it interesting, and if you keep making it to the right place at the right time or the right day, you must be really motivated to come join. So that's it for today. I'll pass back to our hosts in a moment, but I wanted to say thank you very much for joining. Please don't forget the 18th of December. It will be at UTS Great Hall. I promise you that really is the right location. From 8:30 in the morning until 1:40 in the afternoon, we will have quite a lot of, it's really a focus on how governments in Australia, all jurisdictions, are moving forward with their assurance of AI, very much the focus. We'll have obviously stories from New South Wales, but we'll also have stories from our Commonwealth partners who are helping us with the national approach to AI assurance. And we've asked a couple of different folks to come along and put up some really cool demos. So please do put it in your diary, UTS, 18th of December. It's part of National AI Month, which officially ends on December 15th, but we've asked them to stretch the month to Monday the 18th. And of course, it's the last working week before Christmas. So what else would you rather do than start your Christmas week talking about AI? With that, hand back to our hosts.
Thank you so much. We're mostly entrepreneurs here, so the concept of a holiday is just so foreign, even if it is Christmas and the kids are chasing you. I just wanted to make mention of a few things. So we're here at Stone and Chalk. They're an amazing space. I know many of you will know the Wynyard residencies. If you want to learn more about that, we've got some Stone and Chalk people up the back. So Alex, Lynn, and there's a few others around. If you want to talk more about that, happy to help. As Ian so succinctly put it at the start, this is bringing together the dreamers, the doers, and the dollars. And what a great name. You need to patent that because, it makes a great name for a podcast. And speaking of podcasts, the Australian DeFi Association, like that segue, and the Data Science and AI Association of Australia collaborate on a podcast where we get to know the community and the projects. So the talks here are recorded and we'll work out, I've got to do some editing. I'm going to get those slides put in If anyone that spoke wants to be edited at all, you said something you weren't supposed to mention or whatever, I can do those editing, so please come to me. And speaking of the speakers, if I could get all the speakers at the end of this to just stay back after class, we're just going to take a quick little school photo for you guys. The food is being prepared outside. So we've got some sandwiches and drinks from a place called Top Juice, which is really great. I've had them at hackathons before. And we kindly thank Stable. We've got Liam representing them up the back. Put your hand up, Liam. Thank you. The dollars part, we dreamt the food. They had the dollars to do it. So it's very important that, we all come together to do this stuff. I don't know if it's Dell that's going to sponsor the Dell version or if anyone else wants to put their hand up, but it's quite fascinating how everyone comes together here to drive actions, even if the action is just feeding our hungry stomachs. So with that, if the speakers could come up on stage here once more, and if everyone else will open up the doors and you can mingle outside to get to networking. Thank you so much.